excuse me, right behind you. Who are you?
Like a pioneer, I'm Todd. Nice to meet you. Watch my videos. Keep an eye on you.
I hope there's a chat.
This many people, can I have you move your camera away from the door just in case we have to exit? So either in front of you or more to the side, one way or the other. Sorry about that. It's not normal. We don't have this many people.
If you don't mind here.
Oh yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, I should get a good view of everything. I just can't see the camera from over there. That's okay. You see my video bring it?
Oh, I didn't check it out. How long was it there?
An hour and a half before the meeting. I have no truck with my. I'm gonna take all of these and you can feel it. And while I'm filming it, I'm usually going
Welcome to the Monday, May 22nd, 2023 Orono City Council meeting. I know all council members are here and present. We always start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I invite you to stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first order of tonight is we're going to have the swearing-in ceremony of the junior cadets. And I think Chief Arnett has her presentation to do. Is he in the audience here somewhere?
He's on the hallway there.
Oh.
Coming in right now.
Chief, you're up.
Oh, sorry.
My apologies.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I'd like to introduce Jacob and Anna Stanovic. They're going to be sworn in tonight as junior cadets, with the police department through the GTO, or Growth Through Opportunity Program. The GTO program is designed for young adults to gain job skills, social interaction by volunteering and working with city staff. Jacob and Anna will be working with the police department, city hall, Parks Department, and Public Works, doing various jobs and developing their job skills. Police officers and city staff also gain a better understanding of disabilities through their interaction with Jacob and Anna. So tonight I'm proud to introduce Jacob and Anna and have them sworn in tonight with GTO Junior Cadets. This is our fourth group of young adults that we've been doing this since 2019. So Jacob and Anna.
And I gotta say it. Just say it.
All right.
Come on up here, Jacob.
I'm going to swear you in here, and then after I'm all done, all you have to do is say, I do. So raise your hand. I, Jacob and Anna, do solemnly swear under oath that I will support and work at the City of Orono and Orono Police Department, that I will follow the direction of its employees and support the duties of the Office of Police Cadet in the City of Orono of the County of Hennepin to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God. If you agree, say I do.
Aye.
All right, congratulations. And if some family want to come up as well, get in the picture?
Back to next week. Back to you. Yeah, so you now.
So we have parents, Jennifer and Jeff, and then their job coach, Paul.
All right, congratulations. It's a wonderful program we have, that's for sure. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So in one motion, we'll approve all the different items that are on the agenda. And if there's anything we need to take off, just raise your hand. We'll be glad to take it off and talk about it. So with that, somebody like to take the stab at the consent agenda.
This evening, I move to accept items number 1 through 7 as is on the consent agenda.
It's for amendment number 1 minutes.
Okay? Anybody else? Okay, so what we have on the consent agenda tonight is number 2. We're pulling off number 1, we'll talk about that right after. Number 2, the city council work session minutes of May 8th. Number 3, the claims and the bills. Number 4, approval of transient merchant license, Renaissance Fireworks. Number 5, Nevada parking lot and golf course parking lot award, project 21-40 and project 23-31. Number 6, approval of wage adjustment for LALS Local 40. And number 7, approve Hennepin County assessing services. Anybody want to talk any further about those items? Seeing none, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 1.
So that passes 5-0, and then we have number 1, that Councilmember Benson had a question on that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very simple. It just, we can make an amended motion likely to just fix this, but in the notes, my last mayor council report indicated that I had received the fire service notes when the word should be reading. I had just been reading, not receiving 2 years of notes. So that's a simple correction, and you can make a motion to amend.
Okay, you want to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to amend those meeting minutes from May 8th, 2023, with an amendment that the word in my next council report should be the word receiving and not receiving.
I'll support.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
You know, and this is fine. Okay, next on our agenda is the finance report, which is meeting management, the agenda and video recording and recording equipment project.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Council. This item before you is sort of a combination of 2 items. During the 2023 budget process, we had added an agenda management piece that the city clerk really felt was needed. It will streamline creation of agendas. Right now, we create an agenda on a Word document. Everybody submits their own council items, and then the city clerk has to sometimes reformat our items because we use an old template, or sometimes yell at us if we mess it up. But this would automate the whole system. It would streamline it. That would allow the clerk to create the agenda more efficiently. It would require that staff all use the same template, so everything is the same format. It would change some of the way the council accesses the packets. It would now go to an application on the cloud, where instead of going to Dropbox and downloading all the stuff and working on it from your location, you would actually log in to the cloud-based account, and you would see the current agenda and the current attachments. One benefit of that is if there's a change or a late addition, the next time you log on to the site, it's right there. You don't have to go back to the Dropbox and find it. Changes made right away in all copies.
There's supposed to be an arrow there.
Doesn't go back there and update it, and has been accessing it through the application. It's updated anyway. So that part makes sense, and like they said, that was added to the 2023 budget through that update. As part of that update, we were working with Granicus, who currently currently provides our streaming services. And then we also contacted Civic Plus. By we, I mean my IT person, Anna. And they went over it, thought of those two. There's a limited marketplace for it because it is government. And we have relationships with both of these. So we thought those would most easily be integrated into our current system. The Granicus quote was much cheaper than the Civic Plus quote, so we thought we could go with Granicus on that. But as part of the process, well, as you know, we have been working and struggling at times with our audio-video presentation in this room. So independent of the first part that Anna was working on, Dave and I were also working on replacing some equipment here. We have some switches back there that are 10 years old, or amps that are 10 years old that need to be replaced. We have a digital to analog converter that is the piece that fails fairly often. And so we can eliminate that piece from the puzzle altogether with some basic upgrades. And so we were working on that. And in the talks with Granicus, we realized that they offer a solution where they have a piece of equipment with 4 cameras and they would actually record the meetings remotely. We could add on closed captioning for cost, obviously, we could have closed captioning. We would suggest that if we wanted closed captioning, there's a version where they would do post-management maintenance, because if you've ever watched a show with closed captioning on, you know that sometimes the words on the screen might not match what the person is saying. They would go in and update the closed captioning to actually reflect what was said. They would be responsible for putting up the nameplates. Oh, it's the mayor talking. They do it all the time, so they're professionals at it. And then at the back end, so right now the meeting's done, it's recorded. Well, now Dave, the IT guy, has to come in. He has to trim the meeting. He might have to go in and redo some timestamps, and then he has to upload it to the web for viewing. Well, the web, they take care of all of that for us. So at times when Dave has been on vacation in St. Thomas, he's been sitting in the lobby of the hotel room uploading video for us. This would just take it completely out of his hands, and it would free up some IT time. It would eliminate someone recording meetings in the back room, and I think it would be a much better overall product. And so as such, you have 2 quotes for you in both from Security and Sound. If you remember a few years back, we decided on Security and Sound as sort of our audio video provider for this room, for the EOC and the police department, for the new public works building. So we went to them and said, what would it take? The first quote was in the $80,000 range, I believe. Let me pull that up. Oh, the first quote was $46,000 from Security and Sound, and then a new encoder from Granicus that we need it's the new encoder that allows us to get rid of the failing piece of equipment back there. So we would have $52,000 in equipment costs if we, just updated this. If we bought the agenda management software and just updated the equipment to what we have currently, we would still have someone in the background recording it. That would be $52,000. Otherwise, if we wanted to go with the Granicus solution where they're actually doing the recording, we would have, we would have an upfront cost from Granicus of $50,000, and that's the camera system. We would end up with 3 cameras. They would all be digital. They would all be the same age, and they could run them. Its advanced encoder is another $10,000. That's what we would need for some of the closed captioning. There's an option that allows social media to stream. If we ever decided we wanted to stream on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, social media stream would allow us to stream the meetings on the social media instead of just from our website. And then we would need only $28,000 in upgrades from Security and Sound. So it is more expensive to take the more robust option, but staff feels it would be worth the investment. If you have some questions, I can try to answer them.
I mean, I just missed that, Ron, but there'd be
And then $2,800 for the closed captioning then? Is that-
Yeah, there would be a one-time cost of $2,800 for the closed captioning, and then there would be annual costs of $3,800, which would be optional.
So you got your annual costs and your one-time costs.
Right. There would be the annual cost with or without, right now we're paying, I think in the memo, in table 1, I think I talked about the one-time costs of just grant gifts for the agenda management, and what we use now would be $12,400. The one-time cost, and if we go to the more robust version, it's an increase in cost, it could go up to $30,000 if we did the closed captioning and the social media. If we didn't do those, it would be about $6,700 less, so it would be more around $24,000.
What is the peak agenda management?
Peak agenda management is the agenda management software that the clerk would like to improve the creation of the agendas. Make it more streamlined and efficient for everybody with preferably less errors that can sometimes present.
So it's not an optional.
Right,
that's
right.
a-
The peak management, that would be.
I know we've spent a lot of time in all the years of upgrading our technology, and it's been something that we've kind of talked about all the time. So I would definitely be for looking at bringing this right up to the top technology and keep that moving forward. That would be my, everything we've kind of gone through, makes sense, especially with the closed captioning, so that's kind of what we've been taken care of.
And I forgot to add one thing about security, they would update some of the equipment in that room, but then we would also get the monitor mounted up there on the divider wall, so the council would be able to see what was being streamed at the time, and then there would be a mic indication light up there too, so you would know if your mics were on or off. I think that's been brought up on occasion, and it would be nice to know that.
I agree.
No, I appreciate this, and I think that closed captioning, as I said, is a really important addition, makes it much more accessible to a lot of folks. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the Granicus for the agenda management and improve the equipment upgrades as identified in table 3.
Any motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Note that passes 5-0. Okay, that'll bring us to our city attorney report. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't have anything for the meeting at this time, but we do have a closed session at the end, well.
okay, so I'll take this to our city administrator, engineer report number 9, next work session, draft agenda.
So the only thing we have for the draft agenda for the next work session is an update from the city attorney on the latest legislation around THC and marijuana legalization and what implications that might have for municipalities. And then finance director will give the first look at the budgeting process for the 2024 budget. So those are the 2 items that have been on the schedule for a while. So that's what we're proposing to remain on the schedule.
Yeah, we should probably keep that at 5 o'clock, so who knows all the stuff that comes up with legislation. And the police chief, if he's still here, and all the stuff that's gonna have to deal with that and deal with it. So, any other thoughts, questions? No? Any motion?
See, I can make a motion to just approve the work session agenda as written.
I'll second.
Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. Okay, next thing on our agenda is public comments. It's an opportunity for the public to address the city council. The council will not engage in discussion and take action on items presented at this time. However, the council may review issues with staff for follow-up or consideration of a future meeting. We obviously have the fire department report and discussion after that, which we're going to be able to get people with cards, and we'll talk about and answer questions. So if you can hold that for the fire department report, that'd be great. So if you do want to come up, the speaker should state their name and home address of the podium before speaking. Thanks.
Did you turn the speakers on out here? There's a lot of people out here that can't hear anything.
I think, aren't they sure they're not on?
No, they're not on.
Yeah, they can go.
Texted Bob.
There's somebody in the back.
Yeah, whatever, just there's a lot of people who want to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I think that's on, usually on, that's just a mute. Oh.
And you're gonna use this one.
Well, Richie, I know you talk loud enough, so come on up.
Richie Anderson, I live at 3205 Crystal Bay Road. I come before you to ask maybe to think about an adoption of the citizen of the month. And my first recommendation would be for Cass Holloway. And I put it on letterhead.
Good job.
So, whereas during Coffee of the Month with the Mayor in May of 2023, whereas after much capitalization of the discussion dominated by a citizen in regards to the fire separation from Long Lake and interruptions by the schoolyard bully to the mayor. Whereas said citizen of the month, Cass Holloway, was moved to action and finally called out the Orono schoolyard bully for disrupting council meetings and coffee sessions with the mayor. The schoolyard bully took exception to Mr. Holloway, and after some belly-to-belly jousting and posturing, the citizen of the month tried to quell the situation in a heartfelt trying to make peace action on his part, asked the bully to go out in the parking lot and dance. A dance, nothing more, could have been a peaceful and amiable solution, but the schoolyard bully would not go out, and a peace officer had to intervene. Whereas as the situation was dissolved, the schoolyard bully, this is all on video.
Why don't you just say my name? Let's see. Say my name.
The schoolyard bully
Brad Erickson.
is seen taunting on video,
What an asshole.
calling the citizen an effing fag, and the citizen turned the other cheek and left without further altercation. That is why, as a citizen of Orono, I recommend this action to you for a citizen who has the interest of Orono as a prime concern. Thank you for consideration. Sincerely, Citizen Rich Anderson.
Thank you.
Chelsea Weidrich. I mean, if we want to talk about schoolyard bullying, Mr. Walsh, you're the kid in the playground that kills ants with magnifying glass, so. Since you're starting all your speeches off with a quote, I decided to start this one as well, by Dr. Seuss. It is, a person is a person no matter how small. I have to wonder, when all of their cities are combining forces in the fire department, why you feel that you have to branch out. All I can guess is, it boils down to your unfounded ego. So that's what it always seems to boil down to. I do have to commend you though on making your term a 4-year term, because otherwise you still wouldn't be there. We all know that liars and cheaters get called out quickly. I mean, if I were you, I'd save myself a little bit of dignity and go with Jay's eloquently written letter, his resignation letter, because that's probably the best chance you got. And with that, I'll end with another Dr. Seuss quote for you, Mr. Mayor. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened.
Anybody else for public comments in there?
We'll try to do this with comment. James Elder, 195 South Brown Road. I've been up here many times, as you know, and I'm going to try again to strongly urge Orono and Long Lake to get back to the negotiating table and settle this this dispute before some irreversible and costly things happen. It will be the best thing for the firefighters as a group. They're uncertain, they're stressed, there's internecine fighting now among them, and it's all because of this long, unsettled dispute. The citizens should be concerned about things because there are now revelations of the fire service area being disputed in the bar. There are lawsuits regarding the shared services fire contract. There's some fire response times issues because of the way the two departments might end up being separated. The taxpayers should be concerned about financial costs. Just from the rough evaluation of the needs assessment that James had done, operating costs for the fire department, which are around $550,000 now, would increase to $1.6 million thereafter because of these expenses. Given the acrimonious and divisive statements by Orono over the past 2 years, one has to wonder whether neighboring communities will be willing to partner with Orono to share the costs if it should want to go alone and partner back up with some of the members of the agreement. Capital expenditures will likely approach $8 million or more over the next 5 years. Are these costs accurate? Are they necessary? Are they reasonable? We don't know because we don't have any data. So please, get us the data so that the public will understand what the issues are in this matter. Thank you.
For the fire discussion, that's going to be next. And if you have something separate of the fire discussion, you want to come up for public comments, that would be appreciated. Thanks.
Mike Hart, 2510 Casco Point Road. I'm a 21-year resident of Orono. While I've not paid attention to all the city issues over the years, in the past 6 months I've taken a deeper dive into some of the actions of the city. I'll focus on two particular items: the public works facility and the fire services the city has and is proposing to change. These represent two of the top 3 things, along with police protection, I believe should be of utmost importance to city government and the residents of the city. That being said, when major changes like these are proposed, I believe the residents should be fully informed and allowed input. And in fact, the city should go out of their way to make sure that, in this case, over the years, not all residents, including myself, have paid that close attention to some issues. My observation and experiences these past few months are that the mayor and the council are making these decisions with very little input from the citizens. I question a lot what went on in the public works facility, but that ship has sailed, so I'll focus on the fire department. At a breakfast with the mayor in March, I was promised that by May meeting, we would have all the costs and needs assessment and final projected costs for the changes being taken for the fire department. While the report was fairly thorough on the fire apparatus that the city needs to start their own department, no detailed costs were included in that report, including one of the largest, that being the remodeling of the current public works facilities to serve as the new fire station. The council has already made the decision to break away from Long Lake, with no accurate costs being shared with all of us, the residents. We now have duplicate costs for the next 2.5 years, with 2 fire chiefs being paid for by the Orono residents, among other very large expenditures. While the cost and decision-making process are of concern, what about the lives of the firefighters on the Long Lake Fire Department? They're having to make difficult personal decisions of what department they will ultimately represent based on the decision of a few people up here, not the residents of the city. Is that the way you want to treat the people that are taking care of us every day, that are there to take care of us when things happen? And for you firefighters, I'm not sure I want to be in your position to be led by a council and a fire chief that are marching to their own drum. What decisions will they make down the road that may affect you personally again? And the mayor typically ends his comments with a quote, so I'm going to quote tonight. Blank noted he appeared before the city council approximately a month ago and pointed out that there's been no citizen input on the project and no transparency. Blank noted a number of the current city council members ran on transparency, and it now seems like those city council members have become what they ran against. Blank stated the police project has now become a debacle since the city council could not wait to get the projected cost priced correctly and to obtain public input prior to approving the project. Blank stated he sees this as failure of leadership by the entire city council. You know who that blank is in that comment? It's Mr. Mayor when he was a resident of the city about 8 years ago. Mr. Mayor, you couldn't have said it better for me how I feel right now as a citizen of this city. And I'm sure a lot of them feel the same way because I've had some discussions with them. We're being left out in the open. You're not being transparent with us. The fire station conversations need to stop the current trajectory and obtain real input and facts from all involved before we move one step forward. Thank you.
Does not have fire stuff to talk to, otherwise we'll just end public comments. Is there anybody have stuff that's not fire department related for public comments?
No, I was looking for the comment form.
I guess I'm the schoolyard bully. I want to remind everybody that you sent me a Holocaust video which involved the extermination of 6 million Jews a couple years back. Right? And I'm the bully. You're a fearmonger, that's what you are. And you, sir, engage with hate groups, don't you? I like your yellow and black little Porsche Boxster out there. Aren't those the Proud Boy colors? Yeah, you don't know? Go figure. So you still haven't answered questions, unlike what you said you did a couple meetings ago about the J6 experience. You know, if we had representation out there in Washington, D.C. on January 6th of 2021, I'd like to know about it. I'd like to know what you were doing, who you were with. I don't know why those answers are so hard for you. If you weren't there, just say you weren't there. But you know you were there, and we did not discuss that. You did not answer those questions. And you, sir, have not answered the question why you would send me such a vile, vulgar, filthy video. Fear. The politics of fear, that's how you run your city. It's despicable. You are a despicable human being, as are you. Make no mistake about it, you will not survive another election. So you should probably kick the can on the fire department down the road for the next mayor. Because I will use everything in my power to make sure that you no longer sit in that seat. And you, sir, with your little shit-eating grin, same goes for you. You need to answer some questions. I don't know what's so hard about this. You want to defer and deflect and smile and act like it's no big deal. You don't think that shit was a big deal? It was a big deal. You don't think what you sent me is a big deal? It's a big deal. When are we going to talk about this, Mr. Transparency? You want to break up the city down there? You want to break up Long Lake? You manufacture a problem and then you ride in as the savior? You're an asshole. That's what you are. Complete and total asshole. And don't talk to me about swearing when you send me a video with the F word, the A word, the S word, and every other goddamn word out there. Sit up here and act like you have got nothing to hide. You've got a lot to hide, and we all know it. And you don't have as much support as you think you do. Let the people decide.
Is there anybody else for public comments and then before we get into the fire discussion?
Really with a smile on the grin.
Hi, I'm Jason Devine. I live at 2508 Marcola Lane. I will tell you that I've been watching this nonsense online from a distance, and I can't believe how silly some of the people are that come to these meetings. I have engaged some of these people online. There's nothing behind what they're saying. If you ask for details, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'm sick of it, and that's the only reason I'm here. Thank you. Thank you.
No idea. Yeah, what?
Anybody else for public comments?
Jay Nygaard, 1386 West Point Road. Richie Anderson, wherever you are, I'm a little disappointed tonight. I mean, you've been such a good steward of the community and helping out so much, and tonight you come out and put a purely political statement out here, which is entirely inaccurate. I was at the coffee with Mayor Walsh, and it was not the bully who was the aggressor, it was Cass Holloway. So, I'm sorry, Richie Anderson, you're supporting a bully and violence just frustrates me. See, that's the only way I can put it. That's not even what I'm here to talk about. But I heard Richie, and I was so appalled by what he said. If anyone doesn't believe me, watch my YouTube video. It clearly shows Cass Holloway getting up and being the aggressor. There's absolutely no question about that. Now, I had lunch with Cass afterwards, and, you know, we talked a little bit about it, and I understand his frustrations, but I cannot condone the approach he took that day. Today, what I'm here to talk about is you, Mayor Walsh, and your comments. I heard someone else say your comments, and I'm going, oh, this is wonderful. Because one more time, we get told your own comments against you. In the Lake Minnetonka patch, which I don't think is around anymore, in 2012, when you lost your bid to be on the city council, you said a couple of things. And one of them is, the question was, are you satisfied with public safety services being provided to city residents? First thing this guy says, I applaud the Long Lake Fire Department. I mean, really? After everything we've heard, I applaud the Long Lake Fire Department, and fire safety seems to be working very well. I would encourage the continuation of the partnership with Long Lake. It's not my words. Those are your words when you were running to get elected. Where is that Dennis Walsh? Where's the one who cares about the community? Further, how would you encourage the average citizen to become more engaged in local governments? The next question. Anytime a citizen has an issue, I would encourage them to call me and discuss the issue. I believe in the open door policy at all times. And with that said, I would also encourage them to join us at council meetings and to tell us in open forum about any and all issues. Blah, 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 blah. Really? That's why public comments are, look at you, you can't even handle it. Public comments are moved to the end of it. This week you decided, oh, we'll put public comments before the fire station so we can't get ripped afterwards. These are your words. I applaud the Long Lake Fire Department, and fire safety seems to be working very well. Thank you for not standing up to what you said.
Ed Jonak from wonderful Lake City, Minnesota, where I think I intend to stay, to be honest with you. I have friends and family here, but or in the area, but I noticed online the situation on the request for resignations, and I guess I'd like to know what the status is, but I've never heard such applause for resignations, so that's from wonderful Lake City.
Anybody else for public comment tonight before we get to the fire discussion? Okay, I will close public comments, and we will come to the fire department. Number 10, the draft fire needs assessment presentation by Chief Van Eyck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I appreciate the time tonight to go through the presentation of the draft needs assessment. I'd also like to thank our citizens and community members. I'm Fire Chief James Van Eyck, and before you tonight to present the Orono Fire Needs Assessment. This assessment reviews fire and EMS needs for the city of Orono and how best to provide those services and improve on them. In this needs assessment, we identified some items for improvement, but this does not mean the firefighters are not doing their job. They are doing it very well, and in fact, with the limited resources and support that they have, they do an amazing job, and the department has never been better. Everything in the needs assessment is based on how we can improve for our firefighters and our citizens. As we move through this presentation, I would ask that the council hold their questions until the end of the presentation. But I do want to say that I understand how stressful this is on our firefighters and our firefighters' family. It's been stressful on me also. I moved from Long Lake to Orono because I believe it's the best place for us to be an entire team. See if I can get through this before we get anywhere. It is the only city that I can work with to keep all the firefighters together. It's the only city that can support the organization and allow us to create the fire department that the firefighters deserve and the citizens deserve. I've been here for 6 months and I've relished all the support from Adam and the department heads. They have been a tremendous help with the needs assessment and the presentation. Thank you, Laura, for being there for me for that. They're generally excited to help create a first-class fire department, just like all other departments that they have. All of the work I'm doing will continue to do this, or all the work I'm doing and will continue to do is for the improvement of the service for the citizens and the firefighters. It is fantastic to have the ability to analyze the data, find our weaknesses, and develop strengths to improve upon them. My goal is to work towards keeping the entire team together and to know that you have the support to keep improving as we move forward. So let's talk a little history on the Orono Fire Service. Orono has been served by 4 fire departments from about if we could go back to about the 60s. They were the Long Lake Fire Department, the Maple Plain Fire Department, the Wayzata Fire Department, and the Mound Fire Department. Their fire service area is covered by the map to the lower left. In 1980, the city of Orono did a study on response times. And from that study, there were some changes that was made in 1982. The city of Long Lake assumes responsibility for the southeast portion of Orono from the Wayzata Fire Department. It's kind of shown by the middle map. Wayzata is the purple, Long Lake is the orange, Mound is the green, and Maple Plain is the blue. Along with that study in 1980, the city identified a need for a possible station down in the Navarre area to help improve response times. Fast forward to 2002, the city of Long Lake assumed responsibility for the northwest portion of Orono from Maple Plain. In 2002, the long-term contract was also signed. And it started, the creation of Station 2 started. In 2004, the Excelsior Fire Department stands up Station 2, and in 2007, the city of Long Lake assumes responsibility for the Navarre call area. 2018, the city of Long Lake assumes responsibility from the eastern side of Orono that Wayzata was currently operating. So the lower map on the lower right kind of shows where we are today. We're just talking about the history of the fire service in Orono has been ever changing since the 80s for the past 40 years. We've moved from having 4 or 5 fire departments covering us to having 1 fire department covering us. And it's all due to trying to improve service. So the current situation, the contract with the Long Lake Fire Department and Medina, the city of Long Lake and Medina expires at the end of 2025. The negotiation team has been ongoing and has not resulted in any agreements. Currently, Orono pays about 85% of the budget. That's for 2023 and accounts for about 72% of the calls. In 2023, Orono is budgeting $895,000 for fire service. That is more than contractually obligated. Contractually, they are obligated to spend $632,000 in the budget. The extra money is for capital. Above and beyond what's contractually obligated. They've been doing this for more than the past 3 years. And that's because they identified last year with us that the current fleet is at or near its end of life. The current fire capital fund is underfunded, as talked about in the needs assessment, and it's been underfunded since the 2002 contract was signed. $100,000 a year, starting in 2022, is not enough to fund capital for a fire department. There was one increase of 3% during the lifespan of this contract so far. There's currently no defined response standard for any of the cities. The fire department meets a rural response standard overall. We'll get back to some of what the response standard means here in a couple of slides. This model leads to recruiting and retention challenges and also leads to inefficient deployment of personnel. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we start talking about some duty crews. Anything to add from the fire negotiating team on that one? So the questions that's come about is why start an Orono Municipal Fire Department? It's been one of the main questions that's come through on a lot of the comment cards. And again, I appreciate all the comments that have come back on those comment cards. We have received quite a few, as you can tell from the packet, and we encourage more to come. So the big thing is the contract's ending. So this gives the opportunity for Orono to start a municipal fire department. They're able to establish that local oversight of emergency services that they currently have with the police department too. Orono is committed to the best possible service for its citizens, is well positioned to manage and resource a fire department long term. We plan to achieve and improve the following: the level of service, fire and life safety education, the facilities and equipment for the health of the firefighters, the health and life safety code enforcement, emergency service coordination, and NFPA compliance with our apparatus within 10 years of this changeover process. One of the questions that came when we talked about this was emergency service coordination. They asked, was there a problem currently? There are currently no deficiencies between the fire department and the police department. They work very, very well. But what I've seen since I've been here, being a part of the Orono department and the Orono team, is a synergy like I haven't seen before, right? We've discussed the possibilities of cross-training, enhancing our coordination between officers and us. Officers have been stopping by my desk and just popping in and saying, hey, maybe we can do some training on this, or can we share a prop? This forcible entry prop would be great to share. Also, the camaraderie that Corey stops in every once in a while. I have discussions about response, about different calls that come through. When I see them on active 911, we have discussions about that. Not only that, I've been asked to attend their training and also invited to lead some of their training. So when you talk about the capital, this is the capital plan. Regardless of the way going forward, capital must be increased. There's no question about that. The needs assessment CIP achieves NFPA compliance within its first 10 years. We're assuming that we'll be able to use our solely owned equipment, such as Engine 21, Rescue 21, the command and the ladder truck. We're also assuming that the negotiating team will help us buy out the Long Lake shares and Medina shares of some of the select jointly owned equipment. That the Orono Fire Needs Assessment, Vehicle and Equipment CIP for 10 years is $5.6 million or $563,000 per year going forward. We used $565,000 for you, those of you doing math, on all of our cost of courses of action analysis. The proposed City of Long Lake's Fire CIP for the 2023 years, presented at last year's council, amounted to about $7 million, or $705,000 per year of service. Orono's 85% of that would have been roughly about $600,000. Negotiating team, was there any other questions or comments on the CIP side of it? So the emergency response structure, this is where I said we come back and talk about NFPA standards, response standards. Orono is currently in a suburban demand zone, which lands in the 500 per 1,000 or to 1,000 population per square mile. There's different pockets within the city, whether it's rural, urban, or suburban, and you can see that on the map on the right-hand side. Rural is large green defined areas, suburban being more yellow, and then the tan being more urban. Station 2's weekday daytime response is 16 minutes to get a truck on scene, and Station 1's weekday daytime response is 13 minutes and 49 seconds. So out of Station 2, we're not meeting the rural response time standard, which again, we're actually a suburban zone. 71% of our calls for service would best be served by a duty crew made up of 4 firefighters. That's the medicals and the fire alarms, so those are 71% of our calls. There's about, as we talked about in the needs assessment, the true fire cars are a relatively small percentage of what these firefighters do on a daily basis. The duty crew model that we've talked about will also improve the deployment of our personnel. Rather than paging 1 or 2 stations out for every call that we go to, we would be able to utilize a duty crew of 4 to cover those calls. So we wouldn't be having to page out and have 13 people show up for a medical or 11 people show up for a fire alarm. This in turn has helped, or should help, improve recruitment and retention of our firefighters. Now, part-time duty crew wages will add to the budget, and for that increased level of service. Anything else from the negotiating?
Maybe I think it's important to highlight here that the response times that we have are not a reflection of poor firefighter.
Right.
It's how we set it up, and our daytime responsiveness is a huge issue. And particularly in station number 2, where you can see that, you know, the rural is the lowest standard of responsiveness, and we're not hitting it. But it's important that people understand that that isn't because our firefighters aren't responding. They're doing their job, there's just no one there to do it. And when he says all call, just to help everyone understand what that means, is during the day, at fire station number 2, we get a medical call or we get a fire alarm call. We don't know who's available to respond out of fire station number 2. Fire station number 2 is referred to also as kind of the Navarre station. So what the department does is when a call comes in, it goes into the Hennepin County Dispatch. Hennepin County Dispatch, which is not included in these times, takes about 2.5 minutes to respond. They put out an all call. And that pages every firefighter that's available and says, we have something going on in station number 2's region. Anyone that can get there, drop what you're doing and getting there. And so they're coming from further stations to try to make up for the fact that we don't have enough firefighters to cover station number 2 during the day. As a result of that, we're doing tremendously well, given that really limited, it's about a 9-minute travel time between fire station 1 and fire station number 2. It's taken Hennepin County 2.5 minutes to even dispatch it. So our firefighters, we're really proud of what they're doing and how efficient they are under the circumstances. What the duty cruise does is it puts firefighters during the day, which is our most vulnerable spot. It puts 4 of them there in this proposal, and all of a sudden our response times for that region go from, 13 or 16 minutes. All of a sudden we can be there, those are 4 or 5 minute response times, is that correct?
That's correct.
So this is a issue that we have, and you have to kind of understand why that's happening. It's nothing to do with the quality of the response of the firefighters we have, but they're missing the framework to be effective. And that's what the duty crew does. So I just wanted to.
Thank you.
James, could you highlight, because I know there were some questions I had around, so if you add duty crews during the day, how does that affect the current volunteers? And their call ratios?
And their call percentages.
Sure, absolutely. We haven't fleshed that out 100%, but as it is done in other models that use the duty crew, sometimes they require the firefighters, the paid on-call firefighters, to put in hours. Others do not. They ask for other part-time firefighters to fill in those hours. And then all of those calls that are covered by the duty crews typically will not count against their percentages. So currently, to be a firefighter, in order to receive pension credits, you have so many calls for service that you have to respond to from your station or all calls. And so right now, the daytime calls that happen 6 in the morning to 6 at night are also included in those numbers for each one of the firefighters. As we move forward, we would look at and work with the firefighters that we hire, depending on which course of action we choose, ahead of time to talk to them about removing those out of that, or how do we work that percentage to make it easier for them. Okay. So we settled on 4 courses of action for the needs assessment, and we'll kind of break down each individual course of action on the subsequent slides. Course of action 1 is Orono assumes control of the existing fire department. Course of action 2 is the taxable fire district or joint powers that everybody's heard of in the area. Course of action 3 is the municipal fire department with just paid on-call firefighters. Course of action 4, which is the one that staff recommends, would be the municipal fire department with duty crews and also the paid on-call firefighters. So course of action 1, we talked a little bit about this particular one. This actually, from the letter that was sent from Orono to Long Lake back in 2018, this is their option, or it's option 1. So Orono assumes control of that the existing fire department, from the Long Lake Fire Department. And as you see, the pros, this is the least expensive. We have local oversight of the department. It does improve that synergy that we talked about with emergency services. It also does provide access to Orono's administrative support. Not only IT and HR, which are not at Long Lake, but also the mechanic, we have access to that. We have access to the fuel depot, so we can get fuel 24/7. Cons to this are the fleet and facilities still remain underfunded and unsustainable. The response standard still remains that rural demand zone. And Orono residents still disproportionately resource the department. One of the questions came through is like, what do you mean by disproportionately resourced? So what that means is that Orono has been paying more for fire service than the service they actually have been using. So they've been supplementing other cities' fire service. That's what they've been paying for. So you saw in the beginning, Orono pays 85% of the fire service, and they use 72% of the calls. So we would look at trying to make that better. This model, or this course of action, obviously is the least expensive. An average per household is $280 per household, is what we're showing from a funding perspective. So that $787 is the standard operating capital cost to Orono, we're at $895. We talked about that earlier. That includes extra money put aside so far for capital. 10-year operating costs is there at the end for people that had asked for some sort of 10-year operating costs, what it would look like. And that's both operating and capital. And those are Orono costs, right? Yeah, exactly. So those are Orono costs at $9 million. Anything else in that one for the negotiating team? So course of action 2 is a taxable fire district, or JPA. This course of action has been talked about quite a bit with other cities. We used a conceptual district that was presented at the future fire service meetings that have been going on for the past 2-3 years. It also assumes an ad valorem tax distribution of costs, which is pretty standard for joint powers or a taxable fire district. Pros to this, you have possible capital avoidance as we move forward in the future. You don't need 5 engines for 3 fire departments or whatever it is. You only need 1 backup engine or maybe 2 backup engines, and that's it. So that's where you see some possible cost avoidance for the capital. You have a larger pool of firefighters to pull from duty crews if you were actually to use duty crews. Cons to this one, cost burden is disproportionate to services again. On this particular one, we took a look at the 11 cities that were kind of proposed in this conceptual fire district. Out of those 11 cities, Orono amounted to 34% of the market value and only about 22% of the cost. So again, they would be funding 34% of the fire service, and they would only use 22% of the service. So again, they would be supplementing surrounding areas' fire service. The limited operational control, it would be 1 vote out of 11 in this particular one, so you have little oversight on capital and operational expenses. The response standard on this one still remains rural unless they do move to duty crews. And the time frame to complete this district is also a con. So as you look at this average per household for the city of Orono, would amount to $601 per household. That's an increase of $322 over what is currently being paid by each household in the city of Orono. If this one were moving to duty crews, that cost would skyrocket to $725 per household for this particular model, and that's an increase of $445 over the current household cost. Negotiating team, is there anything else on that one? So course of action 3, as you see up on the board, this is, I like to call this one the option number 2 from the 2018 letter. This is an Orono Municipal Fire Department, solely owned by the city of Orono, with paid-on-call firefighters. The one thing that's nice about this one, the equipment plan for this course of action is sustainable and achieves NFPA compliance within the first 10 years. So the pros to this one, we have local oversight again. We improve our emergency service coordination, and we have a sustainable capital plan. The cons to this one are recruitment challenges due to the paid-on-call model. We're dependent back on that unsustainable model for future success. We're still at that rural response performance for the entire city of Orono. It's an inefficient model for use of our personnel, and we cannot phase in the switch from Long Lake to Orono on this particular one. So this cost, we have up there with and without partners. So without partners, this cost would be $437 for the average household. With partners, it would be $315. So that with partner cost would be an increase over today's cost of $35 per household. Anything else from the negotiating? So course of action 4, this of course is the course of action that staff recommends. This course of action is a hybrid model. It has daytime duty crews and paid on-call firefighters. It also is a sustainable capital plan that achieves NFPA compliance within the first 10 years. Pros on this one, we have the local oversight again. We improve our level of service to whatever response standard we want to go with, better than rural, whether it's suburban or urban. We improve our fire and life safety education. We use the duty crews to be able to do that. It's better for the health of our firefighters. We're not alerting them for 71% of the calls during the day anymore, so they're not having to jump out of their skin as everybody did tonight when the pagers went off, right? Everybody, when that pager went off, I think everybody jumped up a little bit, and I can tell you that your blood pressure skyrocketed from about 60 to 80 beats per minute all the way up to 120, because that's what happens every time the firefighters' pagers go off. We improve our health and life safety code enforcement, and we also improve our emergency service coordination. The cons to this one, obviously, are the increased costs. So we show both costs with and without partners. The average household without partners is $511, and with partners is $368. So that's for that improved level of service. It's an extra $88 per average household. Anything else from the negotiating team on that particular one? So as we move forward with our recommended course of action, obviously we recommend course of action 4, which would be establishing the Orono Fire Department, adopting a suburban demand zone for our response model or a version of that. We would like to establish daytime duty crew staffing structure to improve to achieve that response model, and make commitments to 24/7 duty crews, and look at full-time fire inspector and fire tech admin in the future. That would be 5 to 10 years down the road. Initiate apparatus and equipment purchases starting in 23 to purchase new types of apparatus. The lead times have skyrocketed from what used to be 1 year to 14 months, have now gone to 20 to 20 months to 36 months. We would ask that we look at extending contracts for services out to our surrounding municipalities, just like we have now. Very similar contracts for services that the Orono Police and Orono Public Works Departments have been successful with. We look at adopting the League of Minnesota Cities, the formula for cost per service. That's a third land value, a third population, and a third call hours. And this recommendation could be done in a phased approach by moving Station 2 call area early, which we're calling out as course of action 4A, or waiting until January 1st of 2026, which is 4B. But before we kind of get into that, we want to talk a little bit about what the fire negotiating team has come back with in January. So we took what Long Lake's latest offer was back from January and costed it out to course of action 4, what the financial impacts would be for the city of Orono. This one turns out to be very costly to the Orono residents. As we reviewed their proposal, Long Lake was asking for a $2 million lump sum payment. They were asking for the city of Orono to donate their Station 1 ownership, which accounts for about $850,000 worth of equity. They're asking for a lease of $70,000 per year for the next 10 years. We just looked at a 10-year average. We didn't go past that, which led to a $700,000 expenditure over that 10-year cost. The cost for service, as we looked at the needs assessment and course of action 4, That cost actually is $1.9 million over that 10 years, or $190,000 to the city of Orono is what we would be charging them. But they only want to pay us $70,000 per year in their latest offers. So that's a difference of $1.2 million between those two right there. We would also, the revenues coming in, we would purchase Long Lake share, or value of Long Lake share of ownership is $338,000. So we've got expenditures of $5.4 million. We have revenues that would be coming in of approximately $1.10 million. So the total cost of ownership over that 10 years is $4.4 million to the city of Orono. So an annual cost of $440,000, or an average cost per household of $371.86, over and above what you would normally pay for fire service. So we recommend that the council direct the negotiating team to focus on the following from the city of Long Lake in future negotiations. Kind of the disposition of Station 1 is the big one, whether it's 100% owned by the city of Orono, or we establish a shared use ownership and use agreement. The second piece would the disposition of the shared ownership equipment, the tenders, the donated items, the fleet, and then also concentrate on some of the loose equipment, the SCBA's, the turnout gears, and some of that. And then work through kind of that transition time that we've talked about. Did I miss anything on their offer on that one?
No, I mean, just to make it really clear about that offer is, we give them, they ask for $2 million for what they describe as, getting a turnkey business. Orono has funded that. We fund that at 85% right now. So I've always felt like 85% of that has already been ours. But they asked for $2 million. Then the $850,000, which is they wanted us to give us the half of station number 1. So just to back up a little, Orono and Long Lake share 50-50 in ownership of fire station number 1. Fire station number 2 is 100% owned by Orono. But of fire station number 1, the two cities had an agreement between administrators to determine a value of that. Orono did an appraisal. That's what the 850 is based on, which is 1/2 of the value. Long Lake did that. They did an appraisal, never provided us a copy of it, but we understand that was higher than ours. But we used the lower of those numbers. So they wanted us to give them $2 million, donate our half of the building. We're somewhere between $850 or $1 million. Then we're gonna lease back the building that we already gave them half of it for $70,000 a year for 10 years. And then supplement their cost of services for the next 10 years by for sure half, and that's very conservative. And if we go to duty crews and we're in this agreement with Long Lake, then they're only paying a fraction of their actual expense of services, so it's supplemented. If we expand this, so this comes to $5.4 million is what they were asking for us to do. And if we did, another piece of that was to extend it out, part of their offer said 20 years, and then that would take Orono's to $8 million. So this agreement was beneficial to have from them, so we understood what it would take to buy out their portion of the fire service. So now that we can compare that against how did those costs compare to what if we just have our own? And that's what we're doing here tonight, is comparing what our options are in front of us with what we can do on our own. And then the other question that's being asked is, are we a city that's okay with having a rural responsiveness? And with medicals being 70% of our calls, are we okay with having 16 minutes of response time? That's after dispatch, which is closer to 18 to 20 minutes. Are we okay with that? And so that's the other piece that's in here about this offer, which if we take this offer, which is written and this is their formal offer, you know, this is what's holding up a merger. Is asking for Orono to continue to supplement the cost of Long Lake's coverage.
Victoria?
No, so I mean, Matt, you did a good job lobbying for this. As well, a lot of you guys know the audience. I'm married to a firefighter, and part of me wanted to say, just pay this, to be honest. Just to put this to bed, because you are right, it is hard on firefighter families and the firefighters. But we also have to look at, you know, this is the taxpayers' money, right? Would you guys be comfortable with us doing this, right? Giving away half of a building, giving leases that way, so.
So, staff recommends course of action, or staff recommendations for course of action 4A if we were to move down that point. And we've got recommendations for both 4A and 4B in the next couple of slides here. And then we'll stand for questions from the council. We also have some generic timelines. There's some timelines in there for each course of action. Those slides are a little busy, but I'll point out a couple of the big bullet points. So on this particular 1-4A, that would be moving Station 2 call area early, so we'd be standing up a department in 2024 in the Navarre station. That service area would start July 1st of 2024. The department would assume responsibility for Orono's portion of the Willow Drive station, or that's what we've worked towards in the service area for January 1st of 2026, so that would be 100% Orono at that point in time. The costs are the course of action 4 costs that were listed previously on the slides, and also the contract fees for Long Lake in 24 and also 25, because we would still be under contract for them to service the northern portion for those 2 years. The pros to this, we have a gradual transition to be able to do this. This allows the system and details to be worked out over time, allows the firefighters to serve on both departments if they so choose, and local oversight begins sooner than 2026. Cons to this one, we have increased costs begin much sooner, and we have potential for disputes between the city of Long Lake and the city of Warren. Anything to add on that, guys? No? Okay. This is kind of a busy slide, but one of the things that we'd have to do is the blue diamond in the upper left there, we'd have to notify Long Lake if we're going to be moving Station 2 call area early. The highlighted yellow pieces, that's the equipment. We've got to start moving on that as quick as possible because of lead times. And then the green diamond is talking to the state fire marshal's process about establishing a fire department. We've engaged with the state fire marshal's office. We're not able to get a fire department ID until we actually have something in concrete writing that this is when we're going to start it. We can show them the fire station and the apparatus and those types of things to have a fire department ID. What's big about a fire department ID is that you utilize that to submit your national rate reports back to the NFA. And also, we can't apply for any federal grants for any type of apparatus or personnel or anything like that until we have the fire department ID. So those are the big highlights of this particular slide. For 4B, this stands the department up on January 1st, 2026 at the end of the contract when basically nothing exists after that. We would start establishing that fire department in 25 to be able to stand up on January 1st. Pros to this one, some costs are deferred to later years. We don't have to start as early as 24. This provides that clean break of responsibility at the end of the contract. We have fewer opportunities for our conflict with Long Lake if we so choose this course of action. Cons, limited time to test the procedures process prior to the assumption of the entire city, and we have a shortened transition time. On this particular one, some of those get moved out except for the equipment side of it, right? So we need to start preparing those specs, which we've already started to do, and procuring those vehicles. We'll move out the state fire marshal process until 25 to establish that fire. All right. Questions from council?
Chief, before we
I have questions. I have many questions. but it's gonna come back to us at the end.
Well, we're not gonna have discussion, that's gonna be in Jan, July.
So no questions at this point from council about
Not
this?
right now, this.
Okay, so I have. So I want to understand more about Station 1, and what you're understanding, what will happen to that station in the event that the contract comes to an end with no resolution.
Well, currently, there is no resolution to that whatsoever in any of the contracts. So I don't have any idea of how that's going to transpire. That's why we're asking the negotiating team to work with Long Lake on that disposition of Station 1. We'd love to see 100% ownership by the city of Orono. It seems to be a non-starter for Long Lake, which I get. So hopefully we could work out a shared use agreement for that particular facility.
Okay, so it's an unknown right now.
That is a complete unknown, yes.
The contract is silent on Station 1.
Correct.
Okay. It looks like in course of action 2 and course of action 4, you use different modeling to determine costs. I wonder if you could talk about that.
So I'm not, what do you mean different modeling?
The modeling in terms of how you're estimating things. You have like, it's either ad valorem tax capacity, you can go back to course of action 2 and number 4.
So this is course of action 2.
Yep.
This was the conceptual fire district that was presented at the fire service meeting in January. Presented at that meeting, there were 11 cities presented for that conceptual fire district and 4 fire departments.
And what was that one assuming in terms of how cost was determined?
On that particular one, we assumed for our needs assessment ad valorem tax distribution, which is a costing based on market value.
And that's 100% ad valorem in that one?
Correct.
Okay, and what about COA 4?
COA 4, 3 and 4, when we're with and without partners, as we talked about in our recommendations, we would ask that when we extend contracts for services out to our partners, we don't use the ad valorem, we actually use the League of Minnesota Cities formula, which is a third land value, it's the adopt, the third land value, third population. I don't know if you see it, let me see if I can get the laser pointer over there. That particular one right there, Councilmember Benson, is what we would ask that they use for contract.
But that would be our contract terms
For the other cities.
For bringing partners.
But you didn't use that in course of action 2, that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
No, correct, because most taxable fire districts do not utilize that formula.
They do not?
No, they utilize a straight market value. Excelsior Fire District does that, Cloquet Fire District does that, I believe Isanti does. Not sure about Centennial Lakes anymore after Mile Lakes have left, so.
Okay, and what do you think, what would the cost of call, per call, be under course of action 4?
I have no idea, we'd have to calculate that, get back to you. Cost per call?
Cost per call, do you know what it is in neighboring cities, or what it is in Long Lake right now?
No.
The cost
I did not calculate that at all in any of my calculations.
That would be dependent on who responded anyway.
No, I'm sorry, so your question is exactly what?
We get, let's say Orono Fire Department gets 300 calls a year. What is the cost of each of those calls?
By type or hours?
By call. However Long Lake does it right now, look, I just asked you in Long Lake, how did you determine the cost of call?
We didn't determine a cost per call. Their formula was based off of call hours, and that was a 30% weight, and then market value, which was a 70% weight.
So you have no way of estimating what a call might be?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I don't have it here, and I can't do it right now, so I'd be more than happy to do it for you. I just don't have that ability to do it
That's
right
it.
now.
What's the value of that?
Understanding how much we're paying for.
Well, no, because all calls don't take, no laughing, let's just listen. But the calls, call hours, understanding your cost per call hour, because not all calls have the same cost because it goes by the amount of hours, so.
Would that be why Orono pays more?
And so, that isn't a good I mean, the basic, I guess I was trying to figure out what the value of per call, all we can go is by the calls and what our budget is divided, that's not.
I can try and figure this out here in the next couple of days for you, but I mean, we pay 85% of the bills and we only use 75% of the calls. That, there are 72% of the calls. That means that the other two cities, you know, I mean, they utilize 28% of the service and only pay 15% of the service. So our cost per call is going to be higher than their cost per call. I mean, it's just, my assumption just looking at these numbers right now. So I don't know the exact cost, but what are we comparing that to? And
other cities, like for example, West Suburban Fire, that's newly formed in Hamel, Loretta area, were you able to talk to Chief Moore?
I've reached out to him and I did not receive anything back, at least on feedback on this particular thing, but I can ask him what his cost per call is for that West Suburban Fire District.
Yeah, I believe you may know that, so that may be a helpful piece of information to get. Let's see what else. So I'm interested in a little bit in the Excelsior Fire District model, and it relates to this presentation in terms of, it is more of that shared service JPA, the future fire service meetings that you were part of Long Lake addressed. And I'd like to hear your thought on this, just because it's relevant to what you just presented in terms of cost of action, or course of action 4. Excelsior serves 5 cities, smallest is Greenwood at 700, Shorewood is about 7,000. And the formula, they determined a formula for how folks contribute to that in the 5 cities. And I have the meeting notes from Future Fire Service here from September 14th.
Councilmember Hudson, I believe their fire district is based off of ad valorem. It's market value completely.
Well, let me
and that
just
started probably 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
It used to be a formula, and then they phased that formula out to ad valorem, so it's straight market value.
A straight market value, and that's a good point to make, actually, because at that meeting, when the Excelsior, I believe it was chief, presented, they said, for one city, and again, these are 5 cities ranging in size, Shorewood's closest to ours with population, the quote was, for one city to go it alone would have been more expensive than being part of a JPA, even if it pays more in expense than it has in usage. So I'll read it one more time. I apologize. Yeah, the question is, again, with your involvement in those meetings for 2 years, and I wasn't at that meeting, but I see that you were, it's to hear a quote like that and then to not address or to really give a little bit more weight to a shared model in the presentation. I'm just wondering, you know, how you maybe thought of that quote, or was it top of mind?
That's the first time I've actually heard that quote. I mean, that was a couple of years ago. I don't remember the quote, I'm sorry.
Well, I think it's been pretty clear when you see the cost for JPA based on taxable value. That's the details we have. A quote of an opinion from some fire chief over in Excelsior is a quote from a fire chief somewhere in Excelsior. We have the details and the numbers. That's what matters.
Sure. It also matters what other cities are doing. Yeah. So let me move on. So I guess on that note, what is your understanding about trends towards JPAs being in these meetings for the last 2 years?
You know, the fire service has trended towards JPAs for smaller departments, kind of merging 2 departments into one. The talk has been out there for a long time. I mean, I can tell you the Hamel Loretto, they started talking about this not 18 months ago. They started talking about this in 2010. That was the first study done on this. The Mound, St. Bonifacius in Minnetrista, that didn't start recently either. That started back in 2010 also. So those conversations have been ongoing with those cities for 15 years. It's out there. It works for some models and it doesn't work for others. And the main people that it really doesn't work for is people with high market values. And you end up supplementing fire service for your surrounding communities. And if that's what the council is agreeable to, I guess that's what the council is agreeable to. But I wouldn't want my tax dollars going to supplement somebody else.
Yeah, boo. You don't live here. Let's keep our comments, please. Be respectful.
Okay, I have another question. In the evaluation, you mentioned that Orono's building a model, or we're building a fire department to be a model for other cities. And again, I respectfully ask the question how that is so, given that at least the communities and fire departments that I've talked to are not going in the direction of forming independent departments.
So the model that I was talking about is response, improvement for our citizens, and the health and wellness of our firefighters. That's the model that I was talking about, the department that we're building.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with having our own stations and our own employees or anything like that. It's simply the health and wellness.
When I was talking about building a model fire department, I was talking about taking care of our personnel and taking care of our citizens, first and foremost in the minds of me, that's in the council. So that's what I mean by a model fire department, at least in that regard. Maybe it's a bad word to use, because we use model for a couple of different things. In
Well, my assumption was you meant the model being the whole,
sorry.
the whole package. No, that's fine. Have you ever imagined doing an independent or considered doing an independent study on the viability of Orono Fire Department? There is some concern that having the chief of this department actually conducting the study may be a better.
Me personally, no, I have not considered that. I know it was considered by the Orono Council. It was considered by the Orono Council last year, and they chose to move down this path.
You know, we've got our expert, Chief Van Al's been an expert for how many decades?
96. So.
Our police chief has been a police chief for many decades. When we asked him about how we should do our police service, we rely on his expertise. We rely on James' expertise as well. We expect him to be forthright with all the details. There's no details that are hidden. But this is a great time to look at how did we get here, right? Yeah. Eight years ago, when we were first elected to council, we told everybody we were going to kind of reassess how Orono was doing business. Why? Because they were planning to get lots of roads done, but had no money on the roads. They were planning to do works in the parks, and they had no money for parks. And part of our council, that when we got elected, we said we were going to budget correctly. So for 8 years, methodically, we have incrementally brought money into the roads where we had none, and we had $1 million now. The parks had none. We'll have 200,000 going to this next. It's sustainable for our parks, because nothing was getting done in our parks before. So I don't think people remember that kind of stuff going on too. Our water and our infrastructure, they were going to run out of money to start fixing all the 35 miles of water and sewer that are underneath our roads. And we might make sure that it's in our budget, so that is actually self-sustaining. We did that with the public works. We know they were growing. We know that they were growing. You know, when I'm getting to the fire department, this is part and parcel of how we got here. Thank you, though, for bringing that up. This is about the fire department.
No, it's not.
Because
this is you just going on.
Do you want to interrupt me? Because I'll start all over.
Oh boy, please, I'm sorry. Don't punish anybody with that. Please, I'm sorry.
So be respectful of the speakers that are up here. Okay, there's people that I think have agreements on all sides. There shouldn't be any booing, heckling, yelling. Otherwise, we can just end the conversation, because we don't have to do it if we can't be respectful. Okay? But how did we get here? Public works, same kind of thing. We got a building that's surrounded by swamps. Our population has grown, the houses have grown, we have more roads. And so incrementally, we've been budgeting everything for all of these services that we provide. We've been doing it for the police department, so everything is fully funded. The auditors are amazed at how we have done it, but it's been incremental with the staff over time, between our taxable base growing, extra new houses getting developed, paying off debt for 7 years, that we've been able to reallocate those dollars to put them in the budget where it should be. And we're doing the same thing for fire, for all of the equipment needs, for all of the needs that we need to have. We said from day one, we wouldn't be increasing our tax rate, and we've done it all to this day, and we're going to do it moving forward also with the fire department, all without raising the tax rate. So with the fire department, some of the bigger questions that man had brought up, that are also from James, is, are we satisfied with 16-minute response time? Well, I gotta tell you, from my perspective, If I've got my mom or my brother or something laying on the, flopping in the dining room, I don't want to wait 20 minutes. I want that 6-minute response time, because 16 minutes is not good enough.
I live down the street from you, and it has been a 6-minute response time. That's bullshit.
Please don't interrupt.
Look, if we cancel this, it's gonna be because of stuff like that going on, okay? So,
quit
I
lying.
think it's not good enough, and we can do better, and we can do better in our budget and everything else. And our goal and our job up here is to make sure we do everything for the citizens correctly and in first order, and to be taken care of, because we have a great community here. We have smart people, we have great families, we have people who move back here for generations, we have great schools. But our population has gotten older, and it's getting older. That means we have more and more medical calls all the time. And that's important to make sure we take care of that. Things change in 20 years. And so that's what we are doing, is reassessing what is best for the Orono citizens as your elected officials, and say we want to make sure we take care of our citizens first and foremost. And I will tell you that predictor of future behavior comes from past behavior. And our past behavior is put everything in place exactly right for the Orono citizens, fully funded everything, and that's not going to change. So with that, okay, well, I'm going to go to the public. But I got a statement I'm going to read before we go to the public.
No, she can ask her questions.
She can ask her questions, but I know you guys have been here and you want to get up here.
Let her ask her questions.
First of all, I do applaud the Long Lake Fire Department and all the firefighters. They're fabulous, they work hard, and they do a fabulous job. All the hard work and the training and the services have put this, their service is selfless, and what their families give to support us is not unseen and not unappreciated. Firefighters, law enforcement, and public works are the backbones of our community, and I'm fully supportive of all of you. I also wanted to acknowledge that it's unfortunate that the situation with Long Lake has not been resolved and has been contentious at times, and that the firefighters have been caught in the middle. Our goal here is to ensure we have a place to land for all the firefighters that are supportive of all the hard work we do. Our team will continue to work with Long Lake, however it takes down the road, to see if there's any solutions to working some arrangement with them as we continue to go down this process. So before you come up and speak, and I do have your cards, and I'll start calling on Orono residents until we exhaust Orono residents first. There's not going to be any votes tonight up here. We're not going to have any council discussions tonight or decisions. That will happen at our following meeting on June 12th. Our goal tonight is to hear from the chief, which we have. He's laid out the scenarios, and learn what staff believes are the best possible models for Orono future fire services. We've got 3 weeks between this meeting and the next, where you can reach out to the council, me, the staff, if you don't get those questions answered tonight. We'll look forward to hearing your comments on the models, the rural versus suburban. How important is the response time versus the extra few dollars? And it will all be in our budget. And also the additional cost time for duty crews to supplement our amazing volunteer firefighters. And keep in mind, it's not to replace them, but it's to improve call times during the day when every minute counts, especially when medicals are such a large percentage of our calls with our aging population. I would also ask that we allow people to speak and not talk over each other. We've set aside an hour, and we have people who have different views and opinions in here, so be respectful of the speakers, the council, and the staff. I would ask for no clapping, booing, heckling, yelling, interrupting. So let people speak. We can have some discussion, but be mindful of the time you're taking so the next person can come up. And if we do, if it gets a little crazy and people keep getting out of control, we will take a break if we need to. And if we need to keep doing it, we will just end it and bring it back up here to the council and move on to our next item. So I'd like to hear from as many people as we can. So I'll start with my list that I've got up here. I don't know if there's more. Elder Jones, who's from 195 South Brown Road. Are you here?
Jim Elder.
Jim Elder, you wanted to come up and talk? And you came up with public comments. I don't know if you have more to talk about now.
Well, I really don't. I did fill out this sheet, and I wanted to ask why you haven't agreed to do mediation. I mean, this has gone on for 3 years. You don't seem to be able to reach an agreement. I don't know whose fault it is. It's probably both sides. But you know, mediation would be a great way to solve this problem. And I really strongly recommend that you do agree to.
Well, I appreciate your opinion on that. You first have to come to an agreement on what you want to mediate first. There's a lot of different issues there.
You've got issues up here that show the positions of the two parties. A mediator says, what do you need, what do you demand, and they come up with a recommendation.
Well, I think that the mediation.
It's not a new idea.
The only mediation you could probably have right now is probably more on the disposition of Station 1, because as you can tell, we've already started our fire department, we've hired a chief, we've lost
That
staff
is
now.
disputing the idea.
Now to remind you, no matter what direction we go, in terms of what we had to do, we have to have a fire chief, we have to have an Orono fire department, right? And we have to have
Have I said we don't need a chief? Have I said we don't need a fire department? What we need
That's the
is to
process that we
settle
started.
this silly dispute that's taken too long and caused an awful lot of anxiety and costs. And get a mediator in here and help you two cities settle.
I appreciate that, but again, I will also say that really the only thing in dispute is truly the value of Station 1 and if anybody wants to sell it. And at this point, Long Lake does not, and we do not. And what a mediator could do with that, I'm not sure, but that's probably about the only piece right now. Everything else is, the contract's coming to an end, the equipment's called out in the contract, that is spelled out very clearly. So the only thing that is not is the station.
It's very clear, if I may interrupt again, it's very clear that you do not want to have a mediator. And I think you do. It's because of the rigidity you happen to have.
I appreciate your opinion on it.
Oh, BS.
Okay, if you guys are gonna do that kind of stuff, we're just gonna end it, we'll bring it up, and we'll be done. If you wanna continue that, because there are other people in here too that believe we should absolutely do exactly what we're doing. We got 100 comment cards out there, 60 of them said that's what we should be doing. So if the board's want to be the loudest and think that that's gonna make things be better, it's not. So let's just try and let everybody have a say, let's have the conversation.
And, you know, but what I will say is, I think this was a missing piece from our negotiation about what we want to do. You know, what is our vision for our fire department, and does that align with a Long Lake's vision? I mean, this is an important piece. This was our needs assessment. I've been working intimately on this, and I will say, you know, anyone that's questioning James that the numbers aren't right or something, that's really offensive, because I think you've got somebody that he's trying to put this together in a way that is the truth. And he's trying to put together a department that supports his firefighters in a way that could be improved through us. So I'm open to a lot of remedies, but this is a piece that we didn't have. Victoria and I, what does our department look like? Long Lake might decide, oh, they don't want duty crews. They're comfortable with our rural response time. And we're not. Maybe we're not the right partners. But this is the next piece. I fully anticipate our conversations with Long Lake to continue. But I needed this piece to continue with our negotiations, you know, going forward with them. So we're not shutting the door. This is a needs assessment. This is us learning too. So hang in there.
And here's the thing, if everybody's respectful in the audience, more people get the chance to be heard, and that's important tonight, because people are taking out time for your evening. I'm sure there's a better place you'd rather be than Orono City Hall, but if people can be respectful, at least we can hear your opinions, and that's important.
Is there an Ann and Ryan here? I think you both filled one separately, so I don't know if you want to come up together. Over 997 Wilders Trail, right? Is that right?
So the one slide that said the negotiations from January 27th, that's 4 months ago. Why hasn't there been anything since then? And if it's a negotiation, can't you go back with something a little less expensive than that? That's one. Two, I don't think we need our own. I think just figure it out with Long Lake. We're all adults here, we can get along and figure it out. And for Councilmember Seals to be on the negotiating team, that's a conflict of interest if your husband is a firefighter.
Soren, can
Yeah, we've addressed that. The city has a right to, one of the core functions of the city is to put together police, fire, public works, and things of that nature. At this point, in terms of forming a fire department, I do not believe that Councilmember Seals has a conflict. We have talked about there are certain actions that may lead to a conflict if there are things that would enrich her or her household, such as determining salaries and things. But the formation of a fire department does not result in a conflict.
Is that one comment that you said, part of you just wants to say, pay it, agree to it, let's move on? Well, that, it totally benefits you and your family.
Well, hopefully benefits all the firefighters, right? And that's why.
I understand.
And all of you in here who obviously want to speak and want us to join together, right? Everybody's staying together.
I get that, but.
If I could add one point to that, the comment that I took that just pay it was the demand from the city of Long Lake. The fire department does not, those individual firefighters are not paid from those proceeds.
Right. That would be enriching the city of Long Lake, not the firefighters specifically.
And then one last thing, Councilmember Benson has a lot more questions and you just shut her down. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's kind or playing fair. That's it.
And what was your first question? I forgot. What was your first
Why
question?
it took so long about January 27th.
Oh, so just to answer that one, I mean, this is, I think everyone with the exception of Alyssa, she wasn't on the council, has taken a rotation negotiating with Long Lake. So this is not, this has been a long-going negotiation. Since January, what was decided prior, or once we received that offer in January, is that we needed a needs assessment. And you can see by the detailed level of effort that's gone into this, this has taken us this time to assemble this information. So what we had been very clear with Long Lake about since their offer was that we were going to get our needs assessment done, which we're doing. We're actually ahead of schedule of what we scheduled, and that then we'd be in a better position to negotiate.
We're just to have conversations with each other. So I've never shut that door, to your point.
No.
That door has not been shut, won't be shut. But at least we have all the details on it and we'll talk to more about stuff.
The negotiations have been going on over a year.
Three plus years.
Yeah, there's something going on last week. So it's
I'm sorry, this is just a formal offer. The negotiating team's been in contact for.
yeah, the formal offers is what we present. I mean, we're not holding on, but there were some conversations about other things that could be done in a better way. Because I think what you were hearing from Victoria is just, this is fatiguing. You know, I mean, this is not our full-time jobs. And we've been all putting a lot of time and effort into this process, and it's really fatiguing, and it's been a difficult one, and you make it sound so simple that you could just show up and have a solution, it's so clear. But that is what someone would say that doesn't have our experience in it.
So. I'm sorry.
Wasn't condescending.
I wonder.
That wasn't meant to be condescending, it's just that
Yeah,
so let me take it back then.
Okay, one last thing. You go home at night and your arm hurts from patting yourself on your back because you're always doing the perfect, exceptional job.
No, ma'am, but I tell you one thing, we're up here doing the best we can, and for people that have served the community, such as myself, such as Victoria's husband, to be assaulted for that, it is not good.
Nobody's insulting anybody. Nobody's assaulting anybody.
So your council does the best it can. We work for the citizens of Orono. That is our main focus. It's not supplementing the people from the city of Long Lake. It's not. It's serving the citizens of Orono. They have our biggest concern, our biggest interest, and our biggest focus.
And we have done great things for the city, so yes. My honor is not retired yet.
So Ann and I showed up at the first council meeting, I think 7 months ago, we had an issue that we wanted to appear, and you heard about And we've been back since, I think, every meeting other than, I think we missed 3. So 7 months and we missed 3 meetings. So we've heard conversation on the fire department. I've actually had a chance to talk to Councilmember Johnson several times and learned a little bit more on the phone about the fire department that I hadn't heard in the council, and I actually talked to you, Mr. Mayor, at one point. The piece, the starting question is always why, right? Why are we going down the road of our fire department, taking it away from, if you will, excuse me, taking it away from Long Lake? The misleading piece that I saw today, or at least for me, and I don't want to make any accusation to anybody, I stand here actually not knowing, is it better for the bigger of the entities to control the fire department or not? And there's an argument both ways, and I agree with you. The misleading piece is the offer that came from Long Lake, at least the way I understood it through the meetings that I came to and the things I heard along the way, is after the fire chief was hired away. It was after a fire truck was purchased. It was after there was a vote taken to improve the fire truck that was purchased. It was after this council, against opposition, voted to go to the state or county or whoever it is to change the firefighters' pension fund from Long Lake to Orono. This is all happening before this. So there's no public input. And there's really, I've been to all the meetings, I really believe not good answers from the council as to why. It's one simple question is why. No, the point that did come up is the response out of Fire Station 2, I think we said, right? So isn't there a way to work with Long Lake and improve upon that? Wasn't there other things that could have been done instead of taking over the fire department? My take on this, my personal take, and I've been to almost all the meetings, the pieces I've heard is, and the word bully has been used in this chamber a lot today, but we are bullying Long Lake, and it feels like the negotiations were also in a way of bullying. And when people stood up, no different than I am now, to respond and say something doesn't sound right or that isn't what I understood, it really just gets put pat on the head and go sit down. So it's I don't know if going down the road with the fire department or no is exactly the right thing or not. I just don't. There's a lot more intimate details, but it's really not taking public input. I believe that's probably the number one thing.
John Withrow here. We're 25 Oxford Road.
That's correct, yeah. First wanted to start out by saying I have the utmost respect for the police department, for the fire department, for the firefighters on both cities, both towns. When I look at this slide here, if I was teaching a first year business school class and somebody agreed to this agreement, I would fail them. If I was in a public company negotiating with somebody and somebody that works for me signed that agreement, they'd be fired. This seems ridiculous to me. I mean, it feels like, yes, it's not ideal to go it alone. We're paying 85% of the cost anyways. We can't go it alone. They're paying 10% of the cost. They're going to whip on the vine, and they should become crawling to us to say, yes, give us some service agreement. They should pay us $4 million to do this. How about we make that as a counteroffer? So I appreciate that you care about Orono residents and Orono taxpayers first, and not giving our money away as a gift to somebody who's trying to hold us hostage. This huge amount of money for something we've been paying for all along anyways. It seems ridiculous to me. And when I hear, and I'm making these decisions just sitting in this meeting alone listening to this stuff, and it's like, I hear murmurs in the crowd, and it's like, what, do you people not understand math? I don't need to be condescending either, but this seems pretty simple to me. And when I hear in our community, I think I represent the silent supermajority. There's 8,200 people in Orono, and there's 50 or 100 people in this room. It means there's 8,100 people that just want the fire department to show up at their house if there's a catastrophe. They just want the police to be there to help them. And if the neighboring town who's only putting 10% of this towards us, is trying to hold us hostage. I care about the long term, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, and not about what's happening in this moment in time. Are they trying to literally hold us hostage when we can go to loan if we have to? It's not ideal. If I had to guess, if you want me to mediate this thing, we go to loan, they come calling us and ask us for a service agreement later anyways, and we'll support them because it's the right thing to do. But we shouldn't give that up to them just because they're running around with their hair on fire. I mean, they were here today, outside, passing out flyers to the people coming into this room. So, obviously, if you're negotiating with somebody and they're here at our meeting in Orono, the Long Lake people are here to try to get their points across in their negotiating thing. That just, but the gut instinct in me says, I disagree with them. No matter how right they think they are, it doesn't matter. Same thing with the people in the room that are completely disrespectful to you guys up here and the way that they talk and scream and all of it. This is the first time I've ever stood up and spoken to the city council. First time ever. I showed up here, I've seen some of these online, and it's appalling. And the 80, 100 people that aren't here that in this town are respectful, normal people that just want to go about their lives and have this thing happen. And I kind of feel like the tiny majority that are super, super loud, that literally scream at you guys on every single topic that there is in this town, is kind of like tiny little Long Lake trying to hold us up for $4 million or something so we can donate part of the building and then pay them back for it. It seems ridiculous to me. So I don't know. I guess I'm here trying to support the rational supermajority in this town that just want services to work. And in the negotiations, they're clearly the smaller minority player. Anybody that's ever done negotiations in the business world, of course the tiny little small player is going to ask for the stars and the moon. But that doesn't mean you roll over and just give it to them. And if that means we go to loan, it'll cost a little bit more money in the next couple of years. We'll have a lot better service, and over the next 20 or 30 years, I think we'll be better off. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you. Jeff Strandberg, 3895 Bayside Road.
Why? That's it.
Okay.
I don't know COAs, I don't know a lot of acronyms. I do know that I seem to have jumped into these 4 courses of action, and the big one sitting out there is, why do we have to do this? Why couldn't they have just stayed with Long Lake and renegotiated? What I do know, and what you folks who are elected and you folks who are on salary know, is that a city attorney does everything from misdemeanors to contracts. And one thing a city attorney should not do is litigate, especially in a dispute of this magnitude. I can't tell you where the court of original jurisdiction is, but I'll bet you it's not district court in the county. I can tell you that many lawyers are very proficient at what they do. Trial lawyers are different. There are trial lawyers who will eat their young alive. And if you look at a team from Great Plant and one of the other firms downtown, you better be careful in the deposition because they will have read everything that was uttered tonight from all of you. I hate to say it would prevail in that, and I apologize, but it's candid. Thanks.
Thank you. We're almost to you, Cody. Steve Persian, Hunt Road.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for calling in. First of all, thanks for all the time that you've put into this. Thanks for the fire department, 1,500 Farm, by the way. Thank you for asking tough questions. Thank you for being a firefighter's wife. I was a former fire chief in Long Lake. And a couple of questions that I had as the needs assessment was presented. What station wants response time?
Daytime response? It was just under 14 minutes for daytime
In
response.
2000, it was under 5 minutes. It was on Orono. Does your response time include police response and ambulance?
No, it's just our response.
Just fire department response, okay. Is North still along with fire?
They still rent it Lonely Fire.
Yes. So they're instantly notified when there's medical in the city? Essentially, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
Police
two-stage
fire,
dispatching.
yeah, police fire.
There's a two-stage dispatching,
Yeah.
so kind of the county goes first and then they pass it on to.
Yeah, PD and, when I listened today, what I heard was, it's important to improve the response time that we have. And a method to do that, that's being pitched here tonight, is duty crews. I don't think you need to build a brand new fire department to implement duty crews. I did have a question about other offers that the city of Long Lake has made. My understanding in attending the Long Lake meeting was that they've come up with a number of alternatives than the one that was just presented there. So I'm wondering if those are still part of ongoing negotiations. You need to answer that.
Since then?
Yeah.
Since that offer?
Yeah, well, I saw one the other night, and it had a very different amount of percentages associated with the cost associated with the city of Orono.
Nothing has been passed by their council
Okay.
beyond that,
Okay.
one that you've seen. That's the only one that ever come to us within 3.5 years.
Okay. Back when I was chief, we had a group of people that worked together through issues. We built the fire station at the time. Part of that process was acrimonious. But as the process unfolded, we ended up with something that we're very proud of. I'm not sure if it's continued to be invested in and maintained in a way that should be, or if the equipment needs or the facility itself has continued to be invested in to meet the needs of responses and service to our community. That's something that I think other people could answer, but all as a part of that discussion, that was a key component of that we just didn't want to let it fail. We wanted to continue to maintain pride in the department and in the people. So it served the citizens in Orono and Long Lake and other surrounding communities that we serve. I guess I would, in closing, I would ask you to continue to have discussions. There's a lot of spirit around joining forces to improve services for the citizens in communities around, well, I'll just say the country. We know they're taking place in and around here. 20 years ago, Dave Eising and I were talking about, should we be partnering with Maple Plain and Wayzata and have a common department? It didn't make sense to us that Wayzata would have a snorkeler truck, and we went out and bought one. It didn't make sense to us. It made sense for us to collaborate and work together as communities and fire departments to do that. I think you're in a position to take Orono to that level. One of the things that my sense is that all of you talked about when you ran for the positions that you're in right now is servant leadership. And there's times where it doesn't seem like that's taking place. Thank you.
328 DuPont, Long Lake?
I'm flattered that you have that
I
memorized.
took a Long Lake. Oh.
I appreciate you shooting over here. Full disclosure, I did not fill out a card in time to be up here, so thank you for calling me up. I wanted to add some context, I should say, first and foremost. I am a firefighter, 16-year member of the Long Lake Fire Department, and a member of the Relief Association as well. I stand up here before you today, not as a representative of either of those organizations, but as a citizen of Long Lake who happens to serve in that capacity as well. I just wanted to provide some more context to a couple of comments that I heard. One, you were comparing, yes, our Achilles heel of response time, Station 2 during the day. We know that and have known for a long time that is our weakness. We're responding as a paid on-call fire department. But then you compared that response time to somebody flopping on the kitchen floor. And you need to take into consideration that when you talk about an average response time, everybody knows that the vast majority of the calls that the fire department responds to are non-life-threatening emergencies. Things that we drive routine to, no lights, no sirens, right? Things like wires down, smell of natural gas, lift assist. These are things that we're not going to speed to. We're going to get there diligently and quickly, but we're going to do it safely and at an appropriate speed. Compared to a heart attack, and to put this, kind of wrap this all up, a week ago Friday, we responded to a cardiac arrest, and it was in the middle of the day on a Friday, our Achilles heel, right? We got there from Station 1, granted, prior to any squads arriving on scene. OPD always does a fantastic job of arriving there. Like Mr. Persian said, we work in conjunction, right? They typically respond first because they're already out on the roads, they're ready, they're there. On Friday, the Long Lake Fire Department beat them there, and we were going to work before they walked in the door, right? Because that was a true emergency. Someone was on the floor and needed our help now, and we were there right after. So you have to look at all of the facts, all the information before you try to compare apples to oranges. One other thing I wanted to put a little context to was tax dollars. You both mentioned tax dollars. Why didn't it say in stay in Orono and support the Orono Fire Department? Well, I'll point out that you don't stay in Orono, right? Do all of your emergencies happen in Orono? They don't. We're in and out of each other's communities all the time. Long Lake residents are in and around Orono. Orono residents are in and around Long Lake, Maple Plain, Medina, Wayzata, all of these areas. We should collectively want all of these fire departments to be as good as they possibly can be. Even if that means we have to give a little extra of ourselves, like a firefighter might do. Might give a little extra of themselves to make sure that everyone is supported and safe. And that's the idea that you should move forward with as you continue to try to figure out a long-term agreement with Long Lake and maybe some other communities and fire departments as well. I appreciate the time.
Me up. I am a fire wife, and I have been for the better part of a decade here, and I have been to all of the meetings, and I have spoken to an embarrassing number of council members for many, many hours, citizens for many, many hours, firefighters for many, many hours, and have gathered a lot of. What I've gathered is that it seems to be, another person brought it up, a fundamental lack of understanding about why we are here. Even people in the know, and I did not hear it here tonight, have had a hard time putting their finger on any specific issue that would lead to some of the drastic changes that are being proposed. What I have heard repeatedly from citizens outside of these chambers and inside these chambers tonight is that the ongoing dispute is largely due to concerns about control and not what actually is about improving public safety. Additionally, that the responsibility of the situation that we are in currently, the stalled negotiations, and the need for updated equipment and upgraded facilities is shared between the two cities, including Orono, and with all due respect, with Chief Van Isle, who was our much well-respected chief prior to serving here in Orono. I have been hopeful for a solution that moves us towards strengthening the high-functioning and well-respected public safety asset that has proudly served this community for 100 years, and away from burning down an institution that this department and starting from scratch. This is the best option for the community. And there's a couple of things that I heard tonight, comments that I'd like to touch point on. One of the citizens came up here and talked about Orono giving it away to the city of Long Lake. And I really take umbrage with that, because if you are a citizen who has called 911 and fire service has showed up in your home, I don't think that you felt that you were giving your tax dollars away to the city of Long Lake. Further, James made a point where he says that Long Lake has proposed that they, quote, only want to pay $70,000 a year for 10 years. It is my understanding that the last negotiated document that went back to the city of Long Lake, that went back to the city of Long Lake from Orono included that exact dollar amount, and that the majority of the problems that are coming from this are problems that are related to being able to figure out who owns Station 1 and what that's going to do. It is my personal opinion as a firefighter, this is my this is my family. These are people that I rely on every day because they are part of my lives, and James was part of my life and part of my family, still is part of my family. But I have to say that unfortunately, because of his position on either city, whether he was the Long Lake chief or the Orono chief, although his years of experience are very much well known and appreciated and documented here, he is not an unbiased person. An independent audit or mediation is absolutely necessary to get us to come to a place where this council and the city of Long Lake can all come together, because as firefighter Cody Farley pointed out, we are in and out of each other's cities at every moment. And the fact of the matter is that firefighters don't jump out of their beds having heart attacks when their pagers go off in the middle of the night. They have all served respectively for years, and they all stand up and they put on their boots and they walk out the door and they do a good job of it, and they're not having some sort of cardiac arrest or any sort of stress emergency. When they all had that pager just went off back there at the beginning of this meeting, not one hesitated, not one stood up and thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I'm going to jump out of my skin. They got up and they were ready to go, because that's what they do, because they're heroes. And the only thing that they have requested from every council is to stay together so that they can continue to provide the level of service that they have served in this community for over 100 years. And any agreement that doesn't allow that is despicable.
Yep, Kelly Sparkle. I just had a few questions that I jotted down as we were all looking at the presentation tonight, and I've had yours tonight answered at a future meeting. It might be helpful because I'm probably not the only one thinking these things. My first question was what kind of mediation has gone on in order to further these negotiations. So that's been discussed a little bit already. I would say to those who've said, we can't accept what was up there. I don't disagree with you, but that doesn't mean that we can't move forward in negotiations. And that's the purpose of those negotiations. So it would be really helpful, I think, for the citizens to hear how those negotiations have gone and why they have stalled. I, along with others, are suggesting the possibility of some kind of mediation through a third party in order to keep things moving forward. Just a couple things that I don't want to get buried. One of the first things we talked about was the current fleet is near its end of life, and that creates a massive need for equipment costs. I don't know about you all, but anyone who's worked in business knows that when you buy capital equipment, you plan for its useful life and you budget for that. So I guess a question that I have is why are we not budgeting in advance for the replacement of these capital equipment costs? I was wondering about when you say, sorry.
I have a good question.
Oh, thank you. I wonder when you say staff recommends COA 4, I guess just for the rest of us who aren't involved in this daily life, who is staff? Because for me, I'm wondering what the firefighters want personally. My question number 4, when you talk about the possibility of partners and that offsetting some of the costs for some of these options, I'm wondering what the reality is of us realistically being able to partner with other neighboring cities. I've heard some of the discussions that have gone on, and from what I'm hearing, again, unvalidated, would love to validate, that there's not seeming to be a lot of interest in that. So I think it would be helpful for us to understand what kinds of conversations are going on and the likelihood that other neighboring cities will want to partner in some of these costs. Number 5, a lot of discussion around the response times. I appreciated very much the context of the fact that some of those response times are not true emergencies, and so that context is helpful, I think. But I also am wondering how we can count on improved response times with a new model when over half of the firefighters potentially will be left behind. And so to me, as a citizen, I'm concerned about actually having enough volunteers available to respond in a timely manner. And I know the firefighters are most concerned about being able to stay together. And then the last question I have that's not been addressed at all tonight is, I understand one of the big issues is the pension, and if this all just keeps chugging forward without an independent audit or further public comment or vote or whatever else, and we do move forward with an Orono station on our own, I guess my question is, how are we making sure that those firefighters who do transition from Long Lake to Orono are kept whole for the years of service when it comes to their pension? Thank you very much for those questions.
Penny, your writing is very hard to read, but I know it's you.
That's me. Penny Psyche, 2874 Casco Point Road. And I think we need to take a whole step back and remember that Orono, many of us moved out here for the character of the city, which is less urban and more rural, and that's the way the basis was. And when we talk about a response time that's very similar to urban Minneapolis, that people that want that should move back to Minneapolis or to part of the other suburbs. The reason you move out here is just because you want to be in nature. So that's one thing. The other thing is
There is no response time in Minneapolis. It's a lot lower, so
well,
it's a bad analogy.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, go to urban, that's the definition of urban in
Yeah.
Minneapolis. So go to a more responsive, if that's what you're looking for. When you moved out here, you moved into the country. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the whole thing about the Long Lake station, you've left them in the lurch. So they, of course, don't have a service. I mean, it's broken up to do what you're doing. That's the second thing. The third thing is everybody else, Minnetonka Beach, Minnetrista, Medina, and Long Lake are subsidizing Orono. It's like that man said, maybe we pay 85%, but 15% is being paid by people that have very few calls. So, and if we could share everything, equipment, the building, I don't know why we need to have buildings, why do we need to have people sleeping, the firefighter, when they probably are more comfortable at home. Okay. Anyway, all those kinds of things that are, we need to remember that it's like what we have right now is Long Lake and the police, the Long Lake Fire Department and our Orono police. I love, their service, I rely on them, I don't even worry. And so to break it up and to start from scratch also is a call to the every insurance company in the U.S. for homeowners and business liability, all that stuff. I bet it doubles. I bet all our home insurance rates are going to go up because we'll have an unproven service. And you've already given them a 3-year notice that we're not going to have service. So just be prepared. I think you can back off and, appreciate what you have. That's it.
I'm going to bring it back up here to council, and Councilmember Benson had a couple more questions.
I have a question about the capital, and I know the report said it, and I would agree, based on what I've read in history, that has been chronically under the CIP, and capital expenditures have been chronically underfunded. And it does sound like in the minutes I've been reading from the future fire services and whatnot, that, I know other cities have struggled with that. But the question is, what would still be broken, or what would we still need to fix if we simply infused Long Lake Fire Department with capital? Would that solve some of these problems?
Yes.
I mean, it would solve the compliance issues with FBA, but it wouldn't solve the funding issues.
So more is needed than dollars here, and working out schedules with either duty crews or crews at different stations.
I guess maybe I'm not understanding the question.
A commitment by the cities who partnered historically with Long Lake Fire, Orono being one of them, a commitment to better fund capital, which it looks like we've already been doing in the last year or so. We've increased our capital just very recently. Would a commitment to doing that and getting real about capital funding solve many of these issues?
So that was presented last year, and we didn't receive support from the cities to fund that.
Was that the CIP that we got in August? Is that
Yes,
what you're
correct.
referring to?
Yeah, the 2023 CIP that was listed here was rejected by 2 out of the 3 cities.
So we're here out of an unwillingness of the partner cities being Orono, Long Lake, Medina, to fund capital expenditures. Is that why we're creating this department?
No, that is not the case while we're doing this department. The contract is ending. We have decided that we think it's better served having us have in control. Actually, Long Lake has not disputed that notion that they were, without a question, saying, yes, okay, you can control. To do that, we have to do all these processes that we have to go through, whether it's the fire chief, the Fire Relief Association, as well as getting the fire department number. All that stuff has to be done. And then it's just a matter of which model. Does the model say that we want to partner with Long Lake and do service for them? That still is up to them.
So the decision was on Orono's part to not re-up the contract. It didn't just end.
No, it's ending.
It's ending, and we, as a council, decided not to continue.
Not to continue to negotiate a new contract.
Okay. And no mediators were involved in that decision, because it sounds like it was a tough one. I was not on council then.
No mediators were decisions. We've made lots of decisions like that at council, whether it's public works, where public works in our police department fleet, where we had doing tons of outsourcing of all of our equipment and our trucks and our vehicles. And we decided after spending so much money outsourcing all that stuff, we can do it in-house a lot better, a lot faster, and have it, and better, and be able to get to it when we need to get to it. And this is no different when we took over the Mound Police Department. You know, there was unfortunate for Mound that they got rid of their police department. They took that over, and that was like not a problem. I'm sure there's probably hurt feelings at Excelsior and Mound and Maple Plain when they lost the contracts for Orono 14 years ago and 20 years ago. I know we lost our fire, after 42 years, we lost our police department contract with Long Lake with 30 days notice, and that's all we got. And we had to let go of a few people because of that. So things change all the time. And that contract was ending, things have changed in Orono, and we thought it was a good time to reassess who was in charge of that service. And we thought that we were best at the time when we voted on that. We thought we were best to provide those services ourselves and to bring that in-house when that contract does end.
Okay. And that was the decision made without community input. Just want to clarify that.
The community input is called an election. I'm sure you're aware of that as well. We've made all the decisions. We've made all the decisions for the last 8 years, and I can go back on all those decisions where the community picked us because they said, you know what, having fairy dust and sprinkling them on our roads doesn't work very well. Having fairy dust and sprinkling them on our parks doesn't work well. You actually need money. At the time, I remember having a conversation with a councilwoman who says, we have a pavement management plan. I was like, a pavement management with no money is not a plan. You have to actually budget for it and put money aside. So methodically, for the last 8 years, we've been able to put stuff in the budget to get everything covered in Orono within the same tax rate by reallocating dollars over time and paying off debt correctly, like any good business person would do, to put money where the priorities should be. And that's what we have done. Those are the same decisions we've made with the fire department. Based on being elected, we have made all good decisions for those entire 8 years, and nothing has changed, and nothing is changing because of that.
So it's getting late. I'm just going to ask one more question. I'm wondering, Chief Van Isle, if you could speak to the joint and cooperative agreement for public safety purchasing. Just talk about what that is and how it may affect Orono Fire Department in the future.
Are we talking about the one that we joined just recently?
Yes. What is the joint and cooperative agreement for public safety purchasing?
So that was a cooperative that was put together by Hennepin Chiefs to be able to have like equipment between fire departments, so that when we're on a mutual aid scene, air packs were similar, gear was similar, and that everybody understood what the other departments were having on their backs. It's not about purchasing for less price. It never has been. It's about having equipment that's very similar between departments, so that when we go to their scene, when they call us for mutual aid, we're familiar with their equipment, and when they come to ours, they're familiar with ours.
So it's about working essentially as a team or as a collaborative effort with other municipalities.
I would say it's more about having the same equipment, and so when you are called to that, which we're part of the mutual aid agreement, so when we do have our fire departments to that, we'll be able to respond, and we'll have very like equipment and be able to utilize it well.
Okay, so even in the event of the Orono Fire Department, we recognize that we're part of the bigger whole.
I think that's what I just said about the mutual aid equipment, yes.
Very good. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody for coming. We are done at the council level. We're going to go to our mayor council report. Since Councilmember Benson just started, I'll go over to Councilmember Johnson to start.
Mr. Mayor, can you explain how you're going to go forward between now and the next meeting, the process, please, so we know without having to read?
The next meeting, we're going to have a discussion up here at the council and make a decision on which plan to move forward with. Okay, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Crosby.
I think there's some interesting topics tonight. One person brought up the pension and the relief situation. I would support if there are firefighters that leave Long Lake and come to Orono, that they would be fully vested and it would not cost them $1 in whatever their vested pension was. I think it's important to keep firefighters whole. Those are the people doing the job. And I think we appreciate that, and I think we recognize that. Another big point is, it is interesting that there's been a lot of discussion of, why would we do this? Why would we not renew the contract? I am shocked to see that we didn't have this type of discussion or outrage when Long Lake walked away from Orono PD years ago. That seems to be a nothing event. This is simply us not renewing the contract. And to not understand that, yes, we do not stick our fingers in the air and ask for opinion or on every single subject, because we are elected and put in this position to do the job. If we did that, nothing would get accomplished. We would sit in mediocrity the whole time. But to understand and look at the fact that this is a large financial decision, we pay 85% of the bill. What business can anybody in this crowd recognize that pays 85% of a bill? The other party pays about 7%. The 7 is the controller, the 85 is not. If somebody can name that business, let me know. You can even send me an email on it. But I don't know if there's one that exists out there. This is about being good stewards of your tax dollars, creating a safe, efficient service, improving it, respecting the fire department, respecting our neighbor city of Long Lake, because I still have respect for the Long Lake City and the officials that run it. Do I hope that we work something out that we can agree upon? I do. I do. I served on the Long Lake Fire Department for 10 years. Do I hope we can work something out? Yes. But it would be in the manner of Orono running that department. That's how it would be. Because it's about dollars and cents, ladies and gentlemen. There's not a business out there that the 7%er is the decision maker. Doesn't happen. And yes, we are stewards of your dollar. We paid off debt, we budgeted properly, we budgeted for roads and infrastructure, all of those things. And we didn't raise our hand and say, guys, we're paying off a bunch of bonds, should we do it? let's get public consensus on that. This is something better for the city. It's gonna be more efficient, better run. If the duty crew model is the model that gets implemented, that is not going to have a negative impact on the existing firefighters. It will not impact their call percentage, which is extremely important, but it will provide a proper response time during the day. And as a former firefighter, I can tell you, daytime response is extremely difficult. People have full-time occupations, they have responsibilities. They can't make every call. I left work in Wayzata to make calls. People will leave their places of work and employment to make calls. But again, that takes time. So yes, not every emergency is a medical with somebody with a heart attack or full arrest or anything of that nature. But the one thing I will tell you is, most of the time on a medical, they don't know what it can turn into. You know sometimes when you get there and on scene. But the public's interest and the citizens of Orono is our interest. And we will do everything we can to make sure that we have the proper fire department in place and we do our due diligence. And I thank the chief for being extremely thorough with his presentation tonight. And I appreciate everybody who stayed and listened. Thank you.
Councilmember Seals.
Nothing.
Councilmember Benson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to, before I get to my comments on the fire discussion, I just want to address one issue that is unrelated, which is that questions have been raised in the past in some of the meetings regarding a current piece of open litigation with Mr. Nygaard against the city of Orono and very specific people within the city. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to play one here. But what I do want to indicate to the people who are interested is that I did contact the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, and they have provided me with the letters explaining how this trust covers this litigation. So I just am going to say that. I'm not going to get into it, but for those of you who are interested, I will make these available. They're here now for anyone who wants to have, take a picture or contact Adam for a copy. Because that is part of public record. And on that note, I do want to just thank all those who responded to the online comment card, who spoke tonight, and who attended or watched online. And I'm very glad to know that the closed captioning is coming to the city of Orono, because that will definitely make it more accessible, these meetings, for certain folks in the community. I want to say that I attended the Long Lake Open House Forum last week. And I want to repeat here what I did say that night, which is that based on my experience, and again, I'm not a fire expert, but I've been on council now this is my first term, and I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of research on this issue of fire service. And my opinion is that, as we move forward with these decisions, what I've learned is that fire suppression, the act of putting out fires, is about control. I believe that fire service is about community. And on that note, I want to just put forth some questions to my fellow council members tonight, rather than talking more about some of these issues we've already covered. I'm just going to ask some open-ended questions that I would appreciate my fellow council members considering as we move forward with this issue. How have we kept our residents abreast of our intentions and actions related to major changes in fire service delivery over the last few years? Are we open to using available resources, such as informal or contracted mediation, in future negotiations with the Long Lake City Council? How did we inform residents about the impact the bonding sale in 2021 had on the increase in their tax levy this year? And how have we informed residents about the impact the creation of an Orono Fire Department will have on their tax levy in the near future? In what ways has this council demonstrated that the city of Orono is a friendly neighbor? Are we aware that other cities around us have been developing partnerships, sharing resources, and forming fire districts collaboratively? Should we be concerned that we're moving further away from this direction? What guarantees exist that we will have contract cities interested in receiving service from an Orono Fire Department? Are we aware of the perception that city officials, staff, and residents in neighboring communities have of the Orono City Council with regard to our planning around fire services? Is control over a fire department worth the price that will be paid by our residents to build, operate, and staff a fire department now and into the future? Is paying 84% of budget when we make up 72% of the calls going to be more or less of a burden than paying 100% of the budget, perhaps 100% of the time? Is the establishment of an independent fire department for a city that averages about 300 calls a year a necessity? Would an infusion of capital dollars into the Long Lake Fire Department solve any of the issues we're trying to fix with this new department formation? And finally, is this council open to actively seeking out independent data, engaging experts, listening to our residents, and working with other cities to determine the best course of action for our community as a whole? That's all. Thank you.
All right, well, I'll start with a quote.
Yes.
This one's from Bill Russell, who just recently passed away. One of the greatest basketball players ever. I think he's got 10 or 13 championship rings with Boston. It was the most important measure of how good a game I played was how much better I had made my teammates play. So with that, this last couple of weeks, I think our police chief is gone, but we had our deputy chief, Chris Fisher, had his retirement party just the other day up in St. Michael. St. Michael was better. It's fitting because St. Michael is the patron saint of law enforcement. I gave him my St. Michael coin as well. To keep with them, keep them safe all the time. Because that's what the patron saint of law enforcement does, is keep them safe. I also was up at Hackberry Park meeting where we kind of heard from neighbors. That's going to be an exciting project. It's the first time in history we've owned that entire park. And we're going to do some amazing things there. There's water problems they've had for decades and decades and decades. We're going to probably have to spend a lot of money there, but it's going to be a great project. And it's going to be one that's going to be a lifetime that you'll see in Orono. There's also at the Northwest Central League Minnesota Cities, Police Chief Rogers was there talking about the same issues with law enforcement, recruiting, and everything else that's prevalent out there. He goes, because he's so supportive of his council, they do have a much better job at recruiting, unlike cities like Golden Valley, who's I think down to 6 policemen now, where they have 30 because they went anti-police a number of years ago. I don't know if you just saw in the newspaper too, just St. Louis Park had some big water main break, and they don't have a whole lot of money set aside for that, so they're going to have to raise tax rates a whole bunch just to start thinking about replacing the aging infrastructure. Well, going back to discussions we've had and all the great things that we've done, we've got all that infrastructure built into our budget already. So we're thinking way ahead for everybody, keeping everybody in line. And we didn't have to go ask anybody to see if it was good. We knew it was good. We got it done correctly, and we've implemented all that stuff over the years. I think everything's been said about the fire thing at this point, so I'm not going to add anything to that right now, but I will end with 2 quotes. They're both from Jim Brown, one of the greatest running backs of all time, who also just passed away. First quote is, "You cannot get me to be disloyal to a friend. You just can't do it. Loyalty is part of what I live by. I didn't say I wasn't going to be loyal to my friend because he was right. I'm going to be loyal to my friend because he's my friend." Second quote from Jim Brown is, "I'm not interested in trying to work on people's perceptions. I am who I am, and if you don't take the time to learn about that, then your perception is going to be your problem." So with that, I'm going to close the public meeting and we're going to go to our closed session. And the meeting will be closed as permitted by the attorney-client privilege, section 13D.05, subdivision 3B, to discuss a federal litigation by the city of Long Lake regarding the contract for fire protection And we will take a 5-minute break for everybody to clear out.
Thank you for coming today, folks.
Thank you for coming.
I thought we were friends at one time. Wasn't that the original narrative? We were friends, you sent me a certain shred of video. Right? That was the original story. You didn't know the problem with you're gonna let that go. You're a fucking member. I did not know the color.
Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Nygaard.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming up and speaking. That guy's a piece of work right there. Oh, yeah, oh, you should see the shit he posts on Facebook.
Oh, what about the second?
Oh, what do I post? Oh, really? Yeah, facts suck, don't they?
Boy, there's some freaking wing nuts around.
All right. I want to talk to Lisa for a minute. She has some paperwork I want.
Yeah, and I met Gail. She gave me her number. She's got a thing against me. It's already open.
It was locked in there. There we go. Look. Over there.
You missed the meeting.
No, over there. See that? That's the Star Tribune reporter talking to Mayor Walsh. You know how Walsh is lying? Because his lips are moving. That's how. And not only that, I do want to say a couple of things. I didn't get a chance. Whatever this guy presented, this fire chief, is going to cost us in Orono twice as much to have a new fire department. They're acting like Long Lake's a problem. Long Lake ain't the problem. It's these people trying to jack up our costs in order to establish something we don't need. And this guy spent a lot of time justifying stuff, but it was all a justification. No question about that.
Josie was starting to get.
They got police walking them out.
Yeah, we have police all the time.
They're gonna need metal detectors.
I don't want to shut it down because I got 21 people watching now. It's the highest it's been all night. No, I had my chat with Fox the other night, and they produced a bad article, so I told them they could not use my video footage, and they took it down. I know the guy over there talking to Walsh now is from, I believe, the Laker Pioneer. I'm sure the audio cutting out is because of the acoustics in here. Bad acoustics. No, I didn't see Care here. They only had Fox here tonight.
I got friends and family. Well, yeah, I've never been to one. I think you're.
Always interesting. It's never enough.
You asked the right
That's between you and me. And you will see it when it gets there.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Okay, folks. Hey, folks, I think it's time to sign off. They're getting ready to do their closed meeting. I have a feeling they may be talking about the turbine guy. I don't know. But we're going to find, well, we won't find out. They'll know. Turbine guy, signing off.
I think it takes lessons on life for you.